Well, again, we'd like to welcome everyone to Hashing Over History. I think this is our fifth or sixth, maybe fifth. All right, so we're plugging right along, going through the season. Before we know it, we'll be all done with Hashing Over History, but History at Noon will continue throughout the rest of the year. I'm Tom LaClair, the town and village historian, if anyone's here for the very first time. And again, Hashing Over History, this is all part of the sesquicentennial activities. I always say it's a partnership with the Thousand Islands Museum, the Historian's Office, the Sesquicentennial team, and the Clayton Opera House. So again, it's a partnership, many people come together to bring you these programs. Today we got Fritz Delaney, and I know he has some intro that he's going to tell a little bit about how to go about questions, but bottom line is talk away, ask questions. We got Patty, she's filming today. We're going to make this video available to those who can't be here, but we always encourage, if you can make it, be here. Fritz, time's yours.
Thank you. I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to go back to the history of our family on Grindstone. And then we're going to have, talking with Tom, we want to get the people more involved. And I've got a little thing we're going to do. If I can get through the history fast enough, we'll have some fun. So I'm going way back. When the Delaneys first came to this part of the country from Ireland, my great-great-grandfather, John J. Delaney, came from Ireland to Lowell, Massachusetts. He worked there for some time in cotton mills there. And he met a woman that was on the same sailing ship he was on, but never met until they landed in Lowell. And they proceeded to get married, have kids, had 2 kids. My great-grandfather, and his brother, William Delaney, when my great-grandfather was a year old, they hooked up a wagon and a team of horses and drove from Lowell, Massachusetts to Clayton and landed where the Seaway is now. That was a Lincolnfelder farm. And he worked different farms. He ended up buying a small farm on the McKeever Road that is now part of the Woods Farm. And he was also a builder, logger, carpenter, whatever. Built several houses, pretty successful. One of the houses in Clayton he built still stands, and that's the house on corner of Merrick Street and Merrick. Big white house that's right across from the village offices. That was the Delaney house. Another house was where the Need for Speed Museum is, down on Mary Street, where that building is. There used to be an apartment house there. He built that house. And that was where the Catholic Church held Mass in the early days. He was a devout Catholic, and there used to be a house on the corner of Mary and James Street, which is actually there's nothing there now. It was torn down when the Catholic Church added the center to the church. That was an apartment house that was his, and he owned the land around it. He donated the land for the Catholic Church, and also he donated the horses and wagons to haul the stone that built the Catholic Church. So, when my great-grandfather was a year old, that's when they came to Clayton. When he was 18, him and his brother and several other young guys in Clayton decided they were going to get rich and go to California in the gold rush days. So my great-grandfather, John J. Delaney, they went to California, and another one that accompanied them was a Grant, who was a relative of Dan Grant that lives here in Clayton. Well, they all went to California, San Francisco. And my great-grandfather's brother died there, and my brother lives out there now. And he actually found the gravesite for Will Delaney in San Francisco. So my great-grandfather made a bunch of money, came back, and the story goes that they used to take a sailing ship from San Francisco to Panama. Then there was I would guess a wagon trail that went across Panama, did another sailing ship to come to New York. That's how they went out. But anyway, the story goes that he made all this money and he sold it in his coat lining because there was highwaymen around. But he made it back here, and that's when he bought the land on Grindstone, which was and started the farm. And that farm was run from Canoe Point to Picnic Point, then back to Delaney Bay, and of course that's where they got the name. So he raised purebred Ashir cows, those are red and whites, which you don't see anymore. And when my brother took over the farm on East Line Road, people ask him, why you got those red and white cows? He says it's a family tradition. But it was thought that Ashir cows had higher butter fat and milk and supposedly better milk. But anyway, they run that farm. It was like 400 acres. And they also had a stone quarry that's still there. If you were to go to Picnic Point, walk straight back, straight west, you would walk into the Delaney Quarry. My great-grandfather, they say he got on a train, went to Albany, and sold the stone for the state office building in Albany from his quarry. He come back, and as the story goes, he came back a made man. And 2 weeks later, he died. Oh. But anyway, so my grandfather took over the farm, and because he died without a will, they had to divide things up. And before that happened, they sold 70 acres on a foot of Grindstone from all of Canoe Point, Picnic Point. They sold it to the state for $4,200. Later on, they sold the rest of the farm. It was 400 and some acres, which was a big farm. And they had like 80 cows, which back then would be a large farm. They sold the rest of the farm, 400 and some acres, minus the 70 acres, for $5,000. And that was all down to Delaney's Bay. So that's, and he moved from Grindstone, he went to Adams, and the people that bought the farm couldn't make it. So they were gonna resell, they're going to sell the farm. My grandfather came back to Grindstone to the auction of the farm. And he bid on it up to $5,000. He said, I'm not going any higher. It sold for $5,500. So they come back and he bought the farm on Black Brook Road, where Jack Thompson is now. And my father had 6 sisters, had a brother, 2 brothers, and 6 sisters. And all but one of the sisters, my father and his brother drowned in the river, and sister Genevieve Albertine, who would be my aunt that she taught school in Cape Vincent. You know, Darrell Albertine used to be the Assemblyman. She was his grandmother. So the 6 sisters all went to what they called normal school, and all taught school in either Grindstone or Clayton or St. Mary's. So my father worked on the farm. He went to service, come back, worked on the farm and Black Creek, and thinking that he would take over the farm. But my Uncle Harold, his oldest, he was the oldest of the family. My father was the youngest. So Harold was a sheriff farmer in Theresa. He come back and took over the farm, and that's when my father met Ida McAvoy of the McAvoy. They had a small farm. My mother was born on Grindstone. Her father was By McAvoy, who had a small farm on the west side of Delaney Bay. You wonder how they got together. Swam the bay, I guess. So, my father, the story is my father had some help from his father to buy the McKinley farm on East Line Road in 1933, right during the Depression. And I have a picture of the farm here, which is, the house is still standing. So, my father had 6 kids. My mother and father had 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. And 3 girls all went to Albany to school. My oldest sister, I can remember this, my oldest sister, who was sitting right here, she come home, I think, she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was between her junior and senior year, tells her mother she's gonna get married. I can remember my mother, she was really upset, as she could get. And so my second sister went to Albany, and I think she was there 2 years, decided she was gonna get married. So she got married, moved to Houston, but she did finish school at the University of Houston, got her degree and whatever. But my youngest sister went to school, and she went to Albany. She actually graduated from Albany and then got married and moved to, she's been in Alaska for over 40 years. She played for the Anchorage Symphony for almost the whole 40 years.
She actually played for 42 years before she retired.
Okay, 42 years she worked for the symphony and finally retired. So my brother, oldest brother, he graduated from Cornell, then from University of Rochester Medical School, and became a surgeon with a practice in Springfield, Ohio. He's now retired, lives in California. He also wrote a book it's an interesting book. I'm going to read a passage from it that struck me when I read it again. And he's talking about on a farm that my father used to do custom corn cutting. In other words, he had the machine that cut corn, blew it up in the silo. And I can remember being in the silo, you had these things about this long, and they were cone shaped and chains on them, so you could put one end of these things into the next, top of the next one, had little chains on it, hooks. And you used to, when the silage is coming into the silo, I would have this thing on my shoulder. You might have, depends on how full the silo was. There's a number of these cone-shaped things, and put them on your shoulder. As the corn is coming in, you walk around the inside of the silo like that and spread it around. And you do that all day, and you know you've done some work. So, and he was talking about this, and this really struck me, and maybe it will, maybe it won't. But he says, speaking of corn and ensilage, which is cut corn, or hay could be, reminds me of an aspect of growing up on a farm that is seldom mentioned. The smells associated with so many things. Smells are so vivid in childhood, and I've often wondered what you got it? Evolutionary purpose is served by our losing the sense so quickly as we age. It's the first things to go. Have you ever smelled ensilage as you pitch it down from the silo for the cows? There's nothing like that except maybe newly mown alfalfa and any kind of hay. The smell of lilacs blooming, coincided with final exams and the end of the school year in upstate New York. There were many very distinctive odors associated with cows and horses. The manure pile, the fresh white wash applied to the interior of the barn, walking home along East Line Road at night or riding my bike to deliver papers. I readily noticed that each farm had a particular and distinctive odor. With eyes closed, I could easily identify each place by its unique smell, which, as I look back, I can remember that pretty. Always remember going into Uncle Harold's house down in Black Creek, and his wife, Violet, would have a big kitchen table, and that would be just covered with molasses cookies and sugar cookies, and it smelled so good in there. So that's about the history of our family, going back to the days of Grindstone. And I have a picture. This is a drawing of the farm on Grindstone. And I was over there last year, took a tour. Tom Tinney gave us a tour of all the part of Delaney's farm and the Delaney quarry. And the story he tells is about, if you look in this quarry, it's a hole, but there's already one big block that's probably as big as this table. And they would skid that big block of granite to picnic point where you had a bunch of guys there that could read the grain in this big block of granite. And all day long they would sit there and cut out road pavings. And they would add the blocks onto a ship or boat or whatever and be gone. So it was a pretty interesting trip anyway. So I'm going to, how many people remember the riding club in Clayton? Used to be called the Circle M Riding Club. And there was no dues, no nothing, just a group got together. And there was 40 or 50 of us in that club. And that was the start of, how many remember the horse shows, what they used to call horse shows in Clayton? I never knew how it actually got started, but it was a big thing when I was 14 or 15 years old. There was we called them a ring, which was usually snow fence, and the ring might have been 150 feet long, maybe 30 feet wide. And you used to have these games. It was called a Gymkhana, which is spelled Gymkhana, which is an Indian name for horse games. And there used to be 5 or 6 rings right here in Clayton. There's one up where the Seaway swimming pool is. There used to be a ring right there. Right on the corner of Route 12 and County Route 181. Used to be a ring right there. Used to be a ring down where the Kenny Rogers built the kids, where the daycare is. There used to be a ring right there. Another one up Lazy Acres. That was the Musaw farm. They had a ring. Used to be one in Black River, where I think it's Marine Midland Bank is, outside of Black River, just down from Stewart's. Used to be a ring right there. One in Chameau, where the park is, out on 12E going out of Chameau. There's a ring there. And it used to be a big thing. There would be cars parked all around these rings and a lot of people there. Some of the things we used to do is one of the games was what they called a pickup. The horse goes into the ring. You got a guy standing down the other end of the ring. You catch a home. I used to do it with Pete Bailey. Have a hold of the horn like this, and he'd just grab my arm, swing up on the horse, and back out, and it was timed. So I started when I was about 14, and I'd ask my father if I could have $5. Yeah. So Tommy Moran used to haul milk with just a flat truck. Would pick up my horse. He had to back into, it was just no tailgate or anything, just a rack around this flat. And he used to have to back into the ditch so my horse could get on it. And he would charge me $3 to take my horse to the horse show. So once I got there, cost $1 to get in one game. So I could get in 3 games, and they used to pay $8 to win it, $4 for second place, and $2 for third place. So I'd have to come in somewhere in there to have lunch. But we had a lot of fun, and anyway, so what I'm going to do, I have a picture of one of the outings we had, the riding club had. This picture was taken off Sylvester Road. Everybody know where Sylvester Road is? And we had a cookout. And I've made copies. I don't know if I got enough. But I think I've probably got enough to go around and everybody get one. And then, most of these people are from Clayton. And we're going to see how many you can recognize. And the picture was taken by Bill Bender. I'm thinking it's 1954. So if we don't have enough, you can share, but I might have enough. I can't name them all, but I can name most of them, that's for sure. And as I say, most of them are from Clayton. So we get a little audience participation here. anybody, Barb?
No, I'm saying I can't even find you.
I'm in there.
Is this Ross Bogachin's or the horse?
Yes.
Elizabeth Delaney was Harold's daughter,
Yes.
and that was Daryl's mother. So Harold was his granddaughter. Daryl's her.
Yes.
Was Pete Meeks in it?
Hmm?
Was Pete Meeks in this picture?
Yes.
I think that's it.
Where are you, Fritz?
Yeah, where are you?
Back row.
Are you on a horse?
See the horse with the blaze on the front?
You know,
That's me.
with the white mane or next to him? Oh, with the white mane, next to Ross?
No,
Oh.
to your left.
That one that,
It's a brown horse with a white blaze.
Third one in.
On the left side. Oh.
Then see where the horse's head is?
Yeah.
That's Pete Meeks. Sitting down. Now, I'll try to,
Peter Bailey's gotta be in here someplace.
yes, he is. Right next to me. No, next to Moody Girl.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll start at the right. The tall guy on the horse, the first one,
With the hat?
with a hat.
Yeah.
That is Eddie Grant,
Oh,
Dan Grant's father.
oh, really?
The next one is Ross Bogenschee. He lived up St. Lawrence Corners. Then there's two people in the back. One of them is Elwin Flick. That's Mickey and Dick and Shirley Flick's father. And this was their land that we were on. And that's Dick Flick next to him. And Dick, I know you've seen his son, who is out at the DOT that you saw quite a lot with this project out here. He's an engineer for the state highway. Next to him, the next one is Mickey Flick.
Yeah, on the horse?
Yes. And Mickey, strangely enough, became a rodeo judge. He traveled all over Canada judging like a bareback and bull rider, bareback rider, and Kurt's got to be here someplace, yeah.
Kurt's next to you, isn't he?
Yeah, Kurt Flick's next to me. And Kurt became clowns at rodeos that tried to deter a bull. Kurt did that. Then next to Kurt is Minnie Moody, where the Moody's lived where John Pecor lives now, just past Ball Rock Road. Their parents, if you go down to almost the center, you see a guy with a hat on and a white shirt and tie. He was the pharmacist at Ellis's, when Ellis's was a drugstore. He mixed medicines.
Yeah, what was his name?
I can't say now, but he always had a cigar, always had a white shirt, or nearly white, and a tie. Whenever you went into Ellis's, he was standing there. So next to Minnie Moody was Pete Bailey, who is my daughter's in-laws. Then you go past Moody's. Next one on the horse is Kurt Flick. I am next to him. Then the two girls were the Vady girls. I can't say their first names now, but
Gina, Dominique.
Donna and Janine.
okay, thank you. So sitting down, starting is, that's Mrs. Moody. She always had that accordion with her because she liked to play the accordion. And next to her was Billy Weston. You remember them? Lived on Spicer Bay Hill, didn't you? Next to him was a gal that I was kind of taking a shine to. Pat Bush was her name, from Watertown. Matter of fact, I even hitchhiked from Clayton to Watertown to have dinner with her and her parents. And that was BC, before Carol. And I can't say the next two girls. There was a couple women from Redwood that was in there. Pete Meeks is next to those women. I don't know the next two. But the guy in the checkered shirt was Shorty Russell. He had the farm where the cemetery is now, on McCarn Hill. Next to him was Dan Grant's wife. Not Dan Grant, Eddie Grant's wife. Rima, yeah. I thrashed up there. What great meals she could put on in that house. Next to her is, with a head down, the hat, that's Dorothy Musaw. They had the farm up there where Lazy Acres is now. Then the next three, I don't know, I can't name. One of them, I think the one woman in the dark hair, I think her name was Barbara Hinman. She was from Redwood. So, some of us actually, after this cookout, some of us actually slept on the ground, spent the night there, and cooked hot dogs and kibitzing, and so that about does it. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free.
Why was Bill Dunder there to take this picture?
Just because it was a big event.
Where did you say this was located? Did you say?
Sylvester Road. You know where the Augustine farm was?
I know Sylvester Road.
It's all tore down now.
Okay.
Finney owns all that now. Just maybe halfway between, from the Augustine farm to the corner, it's part of the Flick farm. And now there's a fairly new house back in, long driveway back in there. I don't know who lives there now, but that's where this picture was taken. And you talk about Bill, Tom?
Shorty Russell's father, High Russell. Shorty was born on Grindstone on the farm right next to the McAvoy farm, just west of Delaney.
Yep. And what was his relation to the Russell that had
Milton Marshall bought the farm from High Russell when they moved off the island and Shorty came here. And Shorty's mother was a black. High Russell married black, and the black family was quite prevalent on that backside of Grindstone.
Yep, and in Lafargeville.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, a lot of those, like John Black and all his brothers, they went to school on the lower school up in Grindstone. You can talk to any of the brothers that are still alive and they remember going to school with the Russell boys.
Yep. I played what they called Legion ball, baseball, long time ago. And I played in high school as a pitcher for the high school team, and Sterling Malone was the catcher. And Sterling played for Lafargeville town team, and he's the one that got me to go over and pitch for the Lafargeville town team, and I pitched Sterling there. So I have some old yearbooks here. I also have some old maps and old pictures. And this is the picture I brought. This was a farm on East Line Road. The house is still on East Line Road, but a different color. My brother, when he lived there and run the farm, put different siding on it. And that is a woman, my brother wrote a book about coming from East Line Road, the farm on East Line Road, to the operating room. And he had a woman, from his memory, paint that picture in California. And it is really close. Notice, my mother always had clothes on the clothesline. And so that about wraps it up. You're welcome to
Fritz, I have a question.
go ahead.
You loved horses, you rode a horse. When you went to Watertown for that dinner with that girl's family, why didn't you ride the horse with her?
You know, I should have thought of that. I could have made a quick escape.
Fritz, before the program started today, you were reflecting on some memories from Lafargeville. Can you share some of those?
Yes. My father, and they bought the farm in 1933. And before that, when he was working on the farm down in Black Creek, he also had a milk row truck. He went around the farmers, picked up their milk. So he hadn't been on the farm, on a new farm, very long, but he's still drawing milk. He was going into Lafargeville one morning, cold morning, and windows are all frosted up. When you go into Lafargeville on 180, you cross the railroad tracks. He got hit by the train at that crossing right there. The train come right in his door and took him all the way to the next crossing. It's by Agway now. And he was in a coma for like a month. Broken neck, broken ribs, bad shape. And Jim Delaney, who used to work for the village here, worked at the farm while my father was laid up. And I always say about my father, you know, they said he never went any farther than 8th grade in high school. And there's people that you can't find any record of even making it that far. But he was a tough old bird, but only weighed about 160 pounds. But anyway, he recovered from that. He had to mow away the hay, and he always would say that his neck hurt from this broken neck from mowing away hay. Then I can remember when I was 9 years old, maybe, old Jim Kennedy had the drugstore. His father, Jim Kennedy, and Ruby were good friends of my mother and father. Played a lot of cards. So I'm down back at the school, getting out of school, and getting on the bus. And Jim Kennedy gets on the bus and he comes back and says, "How's your dad?" "Why? What happened?" "He got run over by the tractor today." So we had an old F-12 tractor with the lugs that were on the wheels. The lugs were about this long. He was plowing, and his coat got caught on one of those lugs, dragged him down between the wheel and the body of the tractor to the ground, and the tractor kept running, and he put his arm up like this. One of those lugs went right in there and cut both those bones right off. And then the plow hit him, and that stalled the tractor. And this was down, if you're familiar with Black Creek Road, he was down in the field across the creek, and he walked holding his hand from there all the way to the house. And I can remember going home, when I got home from school, the old car sitting there, and the back seat was just soaked with blood. My mother took him to the hospital, and he always had a deformed hand here, and it wouldn't work right, but as I say, he was a tough old boy.
Well, I guess I feel bad that I listened to those memories. But you were also talking about Lafargeville and the hay and how much and
Yep, Lafargeville used to be the center for exporting hay to New York City. The largest depot, or whatever you want to call it, for sending hay to New York City for the horses. You can imagine back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, the number of horses that were in New York City. They had to feed them. So, and there was farmers around. One of them was Lee and Reff. Everybody remember the Reff family? I think there's one left in Depotville who lives in the stone house, right? Rose, maybe? Her father had a hay press, what they called a hay press. And that would put out bales. I can remember when my father bought the Reff farm on East Line Road. The hay that was left in the barn, they pressed it out with Lee. And it was run by, they had a team of horses. I don't know exactly how it worked, but I know they had a team of horses that walked in a circle. that had like a wheel here with a rope on it that would press that hay. And they went around different farms pressing hay and took it to Lafargeville, where it was loaded on a train and shipped to New York City. When I was a kid, and when we bought that farm, they pressed it out, and I was only maybe 5 years old. The bales were heavy, but back then, men were really men. And they could move those bales around, but I couldn't move them. But anyway, they weighed every one, and I sat there with these tags, and they would tell me how much they were, and put that tag on that bale. And there'd be a big stack of them. I can also remember where on East Line Road there was a lot of farms. And I can still name them off. Where Joe Churchill lives, that was Joe Masters, who was Joe Masters' daughter was Joe Churchill's mother. Next one was, you had to go quite a ways. The next one is Clifford McDonald. One of those McDonald girls just died just in the last 3 weeks maybe, Hilda. Clifford worked for Hannah Fields, and they used to deliver coal to our house. Clifford McDonald and it might have been Gerald Basnett, Don Basnett. The two of them would come with a truck and shovel it off the truck into a chute that went into the window in the cellar to the coal bin. And I can remember that just so vivid. They drive out in our yard and back up to the window in the cellar to shovel the coal off. People don't realize that how well off we were back then. It was fun growing up. It was a lot of work, but so I guess that about does it for me.
Any other questions?
Hold on.
I'm just curious, why were farms on Grindstone on an island when they could just be on the mainland? Why did they go over to Grindstone?
It was cheap.
It was cheap.
Land was cheap. You think that my great-grandfather, or my great-grandfather, made enough money in California to come back and buy a lot of land and start a farm and everything. Today's, you can't possibly do it. It costs so much to, when a cow goes for $1,000 now.
But the island is cheaper than on the mainland? Is that the
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yes. Yes. At one time, my grandfather, McAvoy, lived right next to the cheese plant there. And speaking of that, my aunts that were all born on Grindstone, it's got to be 10 years or maybe more. I went over there with two aunts. We walked around where the old farm was, and she's talking about when they were kids, that's how they sold their milk. They sold their milk and vegetables to all the summer rich people, and they rowed a boat to the different islands selling milk and vegetables. And it was just common for them to go to Gananoque instead of Clayton, because Gananoque is not far away from the backside of Grindstone, and it was easier for them to go to Gananoque and get supplies and stuff like that. A lot of things have changed. Kenny?
Fritz, you got any stories that were from 1933? 33 was really, really bad. All the old timers talk about it. Don't remember anything that strikes a bell or. Matt went in and said, well, every time you open the door to go outside, the frost would roll right in the house. Leon Russell said that they were cutting ice.
You've got two people that tell good stories.
Yeah, Leon said they were cutting ice and they wanted to have lunch, so they had ice and they had lunch in the ice house to get warm.
Yeah, we used to have an ice house, is filled with sawdust, pack all the ice in the sawdust, because we had to cool the milk, and back then, all we had we had a good well, that's for sure, and a cement pit, pumped into that, and then put ice in there to cool the milk. Then if you keep pumping, it had an overflow on it that went out to the barnyard to the watering tank. You watered the cows with. You think how great a well, you had enough water to, well, for the house after a while, and to water all the cows. And a cow can drink a lot of water. So that about does me in.
Well, Fritz, again, I want to personally thank you for coming forward today, but on behalf of the Passing Over History program, all the organizers, we do have this sesquicentennial token of our appreciation.
Great.
And thank you. A lot of wonderful memories shared today, and it's great to have you. Thank you very much. We do invite people to stick around. If you got any one-on-one questions, the photo display, the portrait photo display is up around the room. Feel free to take a look at that. And we do have another program that starts at 12 o'clock today. It's on the St. Lawrence Skiff, and Matt McKeady from the Antique Boat Museum is our guest speaker. 12 o'clock noon.